Hey guys, it's Steven from KR Motorsports. Wanted to update you guys on something that we haven't updated in a while. That's the Datsun Roadster EFI build that we're doing. So I wanted to mention that this is something that we haven't really done before. We've actually teamed up with another company, Datsun Restoration Products, DRP. I'll drop their link below. I've ordered quite a bit of things from them, even for my own personal car. And we kind of started talking and figured out that, hey, I was doing an EFI build and they wanted to help so we could work together and produce a whole EFI kit. So a little bit of background. My Datsun Roadster is a R16. That's the 1600cc engine. And this manifold here is actually made by Pierce Manifolds. I actually bought this from DRP, and this is actually what got us talking. So this manifold here is actually designed for Weber style carbs. JT over at DRP actually had these Weber style EFI throttles here that he loaned me so we could get the project going. So a little bit about these is that these are Simon injectors. They're 14 millimeter by 60 millimeter in length. So it's a pretty common injector. I probably won't use these. DRP actually sent these with them, but they couldn't remember if it came with the throttles or if they ordered them. The problem with unknown injectors without the right injector data, it can cause a lot of weird problems in fueling, especially idle, when the alternator's not charging, off throttle, meaning like from idle to barely stepping on the throttle. Not knowing the injector data can be extremely difficult. So these use 14 millimeter O-rings with a 60 millimeter body. So that's a pretty standard injector. I mean, a lot of mid-90s Fords use the same style injector. So JT offered some insight, and his insight was that most R16s, even like the stroker built motors, definitely will not exceed 300 crank. So as you guys know, I love to build cars for the future, meaning that you may not be using everything that you need now, but down the line, if you want to set it up, you're more than able to. So there's a good chance these injectors will go away. We may pair them with, Injector Dynamics or Deechworks or something like that. And doing the calculators on injector size, we've kind of narrowed into like 750cc injectors. We'll definitely be able to idle them really good. And they'll have E85 compatibility, so that way down the line we can offer an upgrade for a flex fuel sensor, and then you'll be able to run flex fuel obviously without having to buy injectors again. So the throttles are pretty well made. Just really quickly, so these are 40 millimeter throttles, and they actually use Weber style trumpets. So obviously the trumpets aren't on here, and if you've ever done any carb or ITB tuning, the trumpets can make a difference in power and power delivery. Obviously, these need to go on the car first so we can measure how much spacing we have to play with the trumpets, but that's kind of low on the totem pole. We didn't get a TPS with it, but by the way this actually looks like the early BMW style TPSs, just by the D shape, the sizing here, and the rotation. I've actually got a couple TPSs on the way for me to trial and error, but that'll definitely be included in the kit. Now, keep in mind, folks, that this is not the production kit. This is basically parts that we put together to make sure that this will even work. If it works, great. If not, then back to the drawing board. But this is definitely something that, us here at KR Motorsports and DRP are really looking to get going. With that being said, I wanted to get into a little bit of the technical stuff before I moved on and ended the video. So on TPS cars, you usually do what's called alpha N. What alpha N tuning is, it's TPS versus RPM. So map signal is not necessarily required. However, the thing about ITBs is that map signal is actually extremely difficult to get. Now, on this Pierce manifold, this shaft right here is actually welded all the way through, and it connects the four. And fortunately enough, there is enough meat here for us to grind this down flat and then tap it for a map sensor source. Now, again, map isn't super important on alpha N, but it is nice to have, because if you have a timing issue, too advanced, too retard, your map signal will change. You know, if you get too much vacuum, too little vacuum, then you can actually use that to help diagnose your problems. And then secondly, if you're already going this far on EFI, who's to say that you're not going to turbo your Roadster? And if that's the case, you know, alpha N with map multiplication is going to be a requirement in tuning. So the next step is, you know, if you watch some of our older videos, you know that I already have a fuel system set up. We are kind of on the line about whether we should include a fuel system or not. DRP has thrown around the idea of making a reproduction tank or a brand new tank with more capacity that would be EFI ready. However, they're the ones that have the detail on that, not me. I fortunately enough have a relatively good tank in mind, so I will not be using a tank. Again, refer to my older videos about the Roadster and you'll know what we're doing for fueling. With that being said, the fuel rails here, as you can see, these throttles are basically made in pairs. So they're the exact same. If you look you can see this hoop here, you can tell that they're basically the same. The fuel rails will be linked with just your regular hose and hose clamp. Obviously, that's not going to be a huge problem. You know, if you're trying to shoot for 800 horsepower, then we'll have a problem. But for the, you know, given 300 crank horsepower, this won't be an issue. This does measure actually at 3/8. So it's a pretty hefty size line. Most 4-cylinder cars, for reference, only use a 5/16. For this to be 3/8, you know, it'll support some pretty decent power. Definitely way more than we'll see on a naturally aspirated setup. Real quickly though, I wanted to ping on ECU choices right now. So a lot of guys on the Facebook post have been saying that, you know, they've been throwing around Mega Squirt / Micro Squirt. Now, those are really good ECUs. As you guys know, we are a dealer for DIY Auto Tune. We are using it on our Turbo Mazda 5 van project, and it's a solid ECU. The problem is that I feel like those ECUs are very entry level, especially the Micro Squirt. The Micro Squirt does not have onboard ECU. It only has 2 injector drivers, meaning that you have to do batch, meaning that you have to fire 2 injectors together. So yes, EFI is going to be an upgrade in comfort and drivability. It's waste spark and, you know, batch injection. It's kind of pointless at this point, you know? So I don't think Micro Squirt is really heavy on our books. But like I said, as usual, you guys know that my favorite ECU is the ECU Masters EMU. So we may do that depending on the overall cost. We have looked at a couple other ECUs, the Max ECU Mini, which is a really solid ECU, but it's lacking a little bit in features. But the price is very competitive. The Max ECU Mini is a hair more than the Micro Squirt, but it offers way more features, and that may be the good middle road, but we're not there yet. So with that being said, I just wanted to show you guys what we're working on and how things are progressing. So there's still a little bit of things on my Roadster that need to be done. We plan to leave it carbureted, get it on our dyno it, and then swap over to EFI, and then, you know, go from there. So yeah, that's really it for this one, guys. If you have any questions, as usual, leave it in the comments, and then we'll get to them.